Yeah, don't do this at home, kids. Don't stick your hand down in the fuel tank. Well, howdy folks, and welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be dealing with an issue that potentially became an issue at the trail ride that I went on a couple weeks ago, and that's fuel capacity and fuel mileage. One of the things, I keep pretty good tabs on the fuel mileage of most of my vehicles. But in order to keep an accurate fuel mileage tab, you have to be able to consistently refill, whatever vehicle it is to the same fuel amount, so that you can know that, hey, I used X number of gallons for X number of miles. And with the 151, there's nothing in the fuel filler neck that can tell me exactly when the tank is up to a certain capacity. So we're using the Dash 10 manual here, dated August 78, which is going to give us the same data for a 151A1 anyway. And what it's showing in here is, where is it? Okay. It's showing that for an M151A1, the fuel capacity is 17 gallons, which should theoretically give us a cruising range of about 300 miles without a towed load. So, that being said, we have these lines here in this specification that says don't overfill the tank. But where inside this filler neck, when you're filling it up, is the 17-gallon line? There's no real way to know if you don't go ahead and have a measured amount. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and drain what's left in the tank, which there wasn't much left after the trail ride that I did, and I thought I'd had it pretty full, but not over full before I left. I did 160 miles, and there's only about an inch of fuel left in the bottom of the tank. So we're going to go ahead and drain that out, and then I went and bought 17 gallons exactly of fuel, and we're going to pump exactly 17 gallons of fuel into the tank, then see where it lines up at, or see where the fuel level's at in the filler neck, and figure out some way to mark that. So first thing we got to do is get a pan and get what little fuel is left in there drained out. Alright, we got us a drain pan, and we made sure that the drain pan was nice and clean, because I do want to reuse this fuel. So we're going to crawl down underneath here, and right here we have, well, so much for a clean drain pan. I think I'm going to have to get in here with a rag or something and get this kind of cleaned up before we start opening it up. So hang on and I'll be right back. I don't know why I thought that would be clean after the running around in the dirt that we did the other day. So we're going to go ahead and break it loose with a socket that is specifically designed for square-headed plugs. break it loose a little bit, kind of clean this off a little bit more. We'll probably end up having to run this fuel through a strainer before we put it back in the tank, but loosen this up and drain her out. Now this is not a bad idea for you guys to do on a periodic basis, because I don't know if you can see that well, but that's the crud that's down in the bottom of the plug. And so yeah, we're going to want to get that cleaned out. The other thing too is that for those of you who live in really humid areas and you're using that ethanol-based fuel, a lot of places, I understand, don't have an option of getting anything other than, you know, I think it's like an E10 or an E15 or whatever it is. That fuel will go ahead and absorb moisture, and you'll get water in the tank and in your fuel hoses, in your carburetor. So it's a good idea to go ahead and drain your tank every once in a while, just to go ahead and make sure that there's no water that's accumulated down at the bottom. So we'll take a look at this drain pan when we get it when it finally gets everything drained out, and see what we've got in there. All right, now we've got everything drained out there, we're going to go ahead and put a little bit of PTFE thread sealer. I do not like using Teflon tape for doing stuff like this, just because the Teflon tape, you got more of a chance of having you know, little tail of that Teflon, you know, breaking off. So make sure you get everything in there nice and tight. And we're going to drop some more dirt into the pan. But the main thing is that after 160 miles, most of it either being on the highway at you know, 55 miles an hour, or on the trail running second and third gear almost all day long, that's all that was left in the tank. So I dodged a real bullet and barely made it home. So we're going to go ahead and put the measured 17 gallons into the tank and see where what it brings the level up to in the filler neck, so that when I go to fill it again, I can know about how much fuel I've got in there, and can get an idea as to what kind of range I'm actually getting, because it's nowhere near the 300-mile range that the manual says. So at any rate, we'll get to pumping the fuel into the tank here in just a minute. All right, now this is the setup we've got back here that we use for bringing the fuel up here and for getting a measured amount. This is a 20-gallon fuel cell that a buddy of mine and I had from a desert racer we built back in 1992. It still holds fuel just fine, but we've got that hooked up to through a fuel filter there, a big canister type fuel filter, electric fuel pump there. It doesn't pump really quick, but then this this power cord goes up and plugs into the cigarette lighter. right, well, we got him back here. So now we got to go ahead and get our fuel hose here. And it's got a cap on it to go ahead and keep the ickies out. And we'll just go ahead and dump this down into the tank. Flip the switch on. And looks like we got to have the ignition on in the blazer for that to happen. It's got to at least be in the accessory position. So we're also going to put a couple of additives into the tank as we pump this in. One of them being a lead substitute. At any rate, this is the stuff that I use. This is a CD2 lead substitute. I used to be able to get it at auto parts store in town when it was Cragen's, but O'Reilly's took it over and I have not been able to find any. So at any rate, it says 1 ounce treats 10 gallons. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to be putting 17 gallons in. So I'm going to go ahead and just run it up and put 2 ounces in. So we also had one more issue. We had a flat tire out on the trail, but in looking at the tire, I was not able to see any obvious puncture marks. So what potentially happened, and what I'm thinking may have happened, is that you know, the tube may have gone ahead and chafed and worn a hole in it. You know, it's hard to say, but we really won't know until we can go ahead and break the tire down. So we're going to use that critter right there to go ahead and break the tire down. That is some old school stuff there. Well, we are in the process of learning something right now. So our fuel level is right up to here right now, and there's still more fuel left in the fuel cell. So at this point in time, we're going to go ahead and measure fuel into that 1 gallon measuring cup thing there, dump it into the gas can, because I'll bet you we end up with a 17 gallons combined total between the fuel tank and the 5 gallon gas can on the back, which is not, of course, explained in the TM. So let's go ahead and see what we come up with here. There's 1 gallon. Let's see if I can do this without dumping it all over the ground. This stuff is like gold up here. Unfortunately, right now I do not have any clean enough funnels to do this with a funnel. All right, the fuel cell is empty, and we ended up with 2 gallons, more than would fit in the tank on the Jeep. So what that's telling me is that we've got about 3 gallons more than we should in the tank. So what that means is sure have a bigger mess here than I thought. What that's telling me is when you fill this thing up to the little loop where the retaining chain goes, that's 15 gallons. And when I took off on my trip, it was far less than that. So that's going to go ahead and, you know, we've got some questions answered here. What I am going to do is I'm going to siphon 3 gallons out of the tank so that I can see where the proper 12-gallon fuel limit should be in that tank. So we're going to go ahead and get something to siphon the fuel out with and do that. All right, we have got us a piece of fuel hose here, and of course we have the yeah, don't do this at home, kids. Don't stick your hand down in the fuel tank. We have that kind of in the way, so we can't get the fuel hose down in there far enough to get a good siphon going. Because no, I'm not going to stick my mouth on this damn thing. So what we're going to do is we're going to siphon 3 gallons out so that this tank is full, which means that this tank should have 12 gallons in it. This way we can figure out where our fuel levels got to be in the filler neck when we fill this thing up. And we know we can put 15 gallons in it if we go ahead and fill it way over full. In the wintertime, that shouldn't be too much of a problem, especially if I'm getting ready to go on a long road trip where I know I'm going to burn a bunch of fuel off before, you know, things start getting too hot and it starts pushing fuel out the filler. But what it also means is that when I am going to be taking longer trips, I'm going to have to make sure that instead of having the 5-gallon water can on the back, that I have 5 gallons of fuel. So there's 1 gallon there. Gonna have to make sure I wash my hands before I light the stove for dinner tonight. And there we go. So that'll be 5 gallons in the fuel can, 12 gallons in the tank, which ends up with 17 gallons on board. Okay, there's no good way to go ahead and etch or scratch anything on the inside of that fuel filler neck, you know, for a marker. So we are going to take a tape measure and we're going to measure from the edge of the filler neck down to the fuel level, and we're going to take a little piece of flat stock and we're going to make ourselves a little gauge that we can hang down into the fuel filler neck to go ahead and make sure that we get the same amount of fuel in it every time. Now, when I filled old Pvt Parts up for that last road trip that I took, that was about the same fuel level. So I thought we had 17 gallons in there, and I thought we had a 300-mile range. Well, we only ran 160 miles, and we ended up with, we're going to go ahead and dump the fuel that was in it out into our little fuel thing there and get an idea as to how much fuel we actually had left in there. Try to get an estimate of mileage, so we'll know that, hey, you know, if we're just going to work a Vora race or going to some place here close by, then we know we can get away with fuel on board. But we want to make sure that I don't end up not carrying fuel when I should be. And it was almost a run out of gas moment coming back from the last trail ride that I did. So at any rate, we're going to go ahead and work on that, and we'll see if we can show you guys what we're doing here. All right, I think we have found what we need. What we have here is a small piece of flat brazing rod. So we're going to stick that down. We're going to stick that down right by the and we're actually gonna we're gonna stick this down in here right by the loop until it touches the fuel. Now I cannot see that very well because of the shadows, so I'm gonna go grab myself a flashlight so I can see what the heck I'm doing. I'll be right back. All right, we've got ourselves a flashlight here. Part of the problem with working outside is you get, especially old guys that have auto darkening lenses for their glasses. You know that when I'm looking, into the sunshine, the lenses get dark. And then when I have to go look at something shaded, I got to have a flashlight in here to see what the heck I'm doing. So right about there. And then we'll bend this right here. And that'll just hang down in there, and when you're filling it up, you may have to carry a flashlight with you, if you want to use this method for filling up. And so we're gonna do that there. And then probably right about there we'll make a cut. This brazing rod is pretty stout stuff, so that can just hang down in there, and we will bend it over a little bit more here. So we're just going to sit down in there, and we'll be able to see when the fuel level comes up to it, and so we'll know when to stop. And that will give me about 12 gallons in the tank, and I can figure my my mileage off of that. Now this is, like I said, this is about what I had in the tank before. So we did 160 miles on. Now we still got to figure out how much we had still left in the tank. So let me go get that pan. We'll bring it over here and see what we got. Okay, this funnel here has a screen down in the bottom, so all them little chunks of dirt that fell in there are not going to get in with our gasoline. All right, now you can see this is a 1 gallon container. 1 quart, 2 quarts, 3 quarts, 4. And the fuel that was left in there, I only had about a half a gallon left in the tank on the 151. So in 160 miles I burned roughly, because we didn't have a real good idea as to how much fuel was in there to begin with, but I'm guessing we probably had between 11 and 12 gallons. So we burned between 10.5 and 11.5 gallons over 160 miles. And so the mileage isn't horrible, and I don't expect the mileage to be really good off-road. Okay, Let's go ahead and get this figured out. We got 160 miles there, divided by, let's go with 10.5 gallons. It's about 15 miles to the gallon. So that's actually not too terribly bad for that little Jeep. So, oh, and by the way, all you Gen Xers, remember when your math teacher told you you couldn't use a calculator in class because are you going to have a calculator with you everywhere? Ha! There we go. So at any rate, about 15 miles to the gallon. So you figure, let's see, you figure 15 miles to the gallon times 12 gallons. That gives you about a 180 mile range for the type of driving that I do. For the type of driving that we do with Pvt Parts, which is a lot of the time, you know, we're running, you know, up and down these hills, we're running in second gear and third gear a lot of the time, and, you know, running pretty high up in the RPMs in order to be able to pull some of these hills and things like that. And so you're not going to get, you know, real good mileage, because according to the manual, with a 300 mile range, 17 gallons, that should be getting you roughly about 17, 18 miles to the gallon. I'm guessing. I could get my calculator out again, but I'm not going to right now. If you all want to do the math, you can figure it out for yourself. But the most important thing that that I take from this is that if I'm going anywhere over 100 miles, then I need to take my 5-gallon fuel can with me. I need to have 5 gallons of fuel strapped on the back of the Jeep, and the 5 gallons of water, we're going to have to find someplace else to put that. All right, well, the next thing we've got to do here is we've got to figure out whether we've got a bad tire or just a bad tube. We've got to get this broke down, so we're going to go ahead and pull the valve core out, and maybe we are. Yep, we got to go find my other valve stem tool. Okay, we've got it. Now, before you ever break a tire down, doesn't matter whether the tire is totally flat or not, it's always a good idea to get in the habit of pulling the valve stem out, or the core out. So now, this tire machine normally has a bead breaker that'll do both. You can do the top bead and then you can do the bottom bead. Unfortunately, my bottom bead breaker is messed up, so we're going to have to put this on like this, and actually it's not going to fit real well. So we're going to have to get creative here. We're going to go ahead and break down the front bead first, and hopefully we can get this to, hopefully we can get the tire out, or get the tube, you know, get it broke down enough so that we can get the tube out. Works a lot better when everything is working the way it's supposed to. have to get our tire soap, or dead rat on a wire. Just to lube up the bead just enough so that we can get this thing to break loose. There we go. The bead is broke loose. Now we're not going to go ahead, and I don't think we're going to be able to get it all the way off of there, but what I want to see is what caused the tube to quit holding air. So we're just going to lift the tire out. Okay. All right, you guys can see right there and right there. I will be willing to bet money that whoever installed this tube pinched it, because that would have been right around in this area here on the tire, and there are no punctures on the outside of the tire at all. So it looks like we're going to be able to get away with just putting a new tube in it. And that is a good thing. So, but what we are going to do is I am going to stick my hand inside the tire here, in and around the offending location. And there are no cuts, no protrusions, no nothing inside there. But what I have noticed in there is a lack of talcum powder. Talcum powder is actually pretty important to throw a little bit in. You know, you don't have to get any special tire talcum powder. Just freaking old baby powder works fine. And that way, you know, if you do get a flat tire or a blowout, it smells baby fresh. All right, we have a tube here. And this tube actually has the right diameter stem on it. This is a used tube. It's an old tube, and so I'm hoping it'll last for a little while at least. And okay, maybe we're not going to use this tube. All right, let's see if we can find a different one. All right, we are not going to try to find another tube right now. We are going to show you how to patch a tube. Oh, the first thing you're going to want to do is get your supplies. You're going to want a roller like this. And this will go ahead and help roll the patch and get the patch on. You're going to need to get some vulcanizing fluid compound, vulcanizing cement. If you have some in your shop, but but it's been there for a long time, check it to make sure, because there ain't nothing worse than getting in the middle of doing something like this and finding out that your rubber glue here has solidified itself. And then you're going to want to get some of this stuff here, which is rubber prep. I get the stuff at Napa. I am not sponsored by Napa in any way, shape, or form, so you know, don't even bother to go there. Normally, you need to get something to go ahead and rough the surface up too. So right now, what I've got is just some coarse grit sandpaper. So you're going to want to sand it down so that you've got a real good surface for that that patch to bind to. Once you get that sanded down real good, you'll need to take some of this buffing compound, put a little bit on a rag, wipe the area down. This is going to go ahead and get rid of any grease or any dirt, dust, whatever that might make your patch not want to stick. You're going to want to figure out about where your patch needs to go, and then take your vulcanizing compound and put a bunch of it on. And this is just like rubber cement, the rubber cement you used in class and things like that when you were a kid. And then you're going to want to peel the cover off, or peel the cover off of that, and then put some on the patch. Like I said, there's probably a bunch of other different ways, and I'm sure there's a bunch of tire guys that are freaking out right now saying, you don't need to do that, damn it, why are you doing that? And then let it set up a little bit. I learned this from an old school tire guy. So, you know, if he did it wrong, well, I haven't had any patches on any of the tires that I've done fail. So once this stuff kind of tacks up a little bit, you're going to want to put your patch right over top. And then you're going to get your little tool here to go ahead and help get this bonded to the tube. And what I was told to do, the way I was told to do it, is you've got this real light plastic cover. He told me, he said, just keep doing this until that cover, that plastic, basically doesn't want to, is loose from the patch. And then you're going to pull that plastic, that lightweight plastic cover off. And then he said to take just a little bit of this stuff, your vulcanizing compound, and just go around the edges, and then let it cure, let it dry. Now, with a tube, you're dealing with a different kind of situation than you would be with a tubeless tire. With a tubeless tire, you can just throw air back in it and you're good to go. With a tube, you've got to let this set up long enough so that everything is nice and dry, because you're going to have to put talcum powder, you're going to have to put something over that so that the tube can still move inside the tire. So we're going to go ahead and let that set up a little bit, and we'll be right back. Okay, that should be set up well enough. Now we are going to take our little frickin' thingamabob here of, helps to read the instructions on the top, of baby powder. Just a little thing of baby powder. And we are going to put that right over top of the patch. We're going to make sure that that gets kind of rubbed in there so that you don't have any sticky spots. Now, we're going to go ahead and pull the valve core out, because we need to stick this back in there. But before we put the tube in, we're going to take and release the tire. Let's see if I can see what the heck we're doing here. And normally you wouldn't have the rear beads seated on it, but that's kind of the situation that we're in right now. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to take a tire spoon and open this up enough and dump a bunch of baby powder down in the tube, or in the tire. Make sure you get a pretty decent amount in there. And then you're going to take and just spin it around, making sure that you get the baby powder, talcum powder, whatever you're using, all over the inside of the tire. And we'll go ahead and check this. I don't know. Yeah, you guys should. You can see the talcum powder all over the inside of the tire down in there. So once that is done, then you're going to need to stuff your tube in. You're going to want to lay the tube out with the valve stem located correctly. And then you're just going to want to start stuffing the tube into the tire. Like I said, it is usually a heck of a lot easier when you've got both beads broken down. That back bead just wasn't wanting to do it. We'll make sure that that tube is all the way in there. And let me grab one more thing here. Okay, this little critter right here will really come in handy. This is a valve stem protector off of a World War II Jeep. But what you're going to do with this, you can get these at just about any of the suppliers that specialize in World War II Jeep parts. Ron Fitzpatrick Jeep Parts. I've done business with him in the past for some of the World War II Jeeps that I've worked on over the years. Once you get the valve stem through the hole, you want to make sure that that is flat in there, and then you'll screw this valve stem protector on. And what that's going to do is hold your valve stem. It should, I don't know if it'll do it on the 151s, but it won't. But it'll keep the valve stem from sucking back in. Now that you've done this, don't seat the bead yet. You'll get some air. Okay, before you put the bead back on, take some air. I just happen to have just a regular old schnozzle here. Don't put the valve core back in yet. Fill this up, fill the tube up until it starts bringing the tire up like this. And what that's doing, what that's doing is that is going ahead and kind of overinflating the tube a little bit. And what that's, by doing that, you are making sure that any little kinks or anything else like that in the tube are gone. Because that is the last thing you want. Because any folds or kinks in the tube, it's the last thing you want. That's probably what caused the failure on that tube there. Plus the fact there wasn't any real talcum powder. There wasn't anything in there, so the tube most likely got pinched. So once you get it blown up, then you're going to go ahead and let the air back out of it again. And make sure as much of it comes out as possible. Just let it air down till you don't hear any air coming out anymore. And this is where your tire spoons are going to come in handy. Because you're gonna need to make sure that when you bring these tire spoons up like this, trying to get the bead on, you go ahead and make sure that you're not pinching that tube. Because pinching the tube will cause an immediate failure on the tube. So whenever I do these, I don't like to do them with the regular tire bar, because of the chance of getting that tube pinched in there. You may end up having to, just to work this really slowly, and you'll also have to make sure that your tire gets down into the dip in the rim, but just be really careful that you don't pinch that tube, because honestly, it's a lot of freaking work to do this, just to have the tube get pinched and blow out. It's been there, done that. When I was first learning how to do this, I probably went through half a dozen tubes trying to learn how to do it. And there we go. So once you get it down in there, once you get the tire on, kind of go around and make sure that the tube is not protruding up to where when you seat the bead on the tire, to where it'll get pinched. So we're looking pretty good here right now. So we're going to go ahead and get a correct tire filler upper, and go ahead and get some air in this thing. Okay, this tire filler upper that I have does not have the guts in it, so I got to set it on there and then go ahead and let that let it air back down again once the bead has been set. Pull this little valve stem protector off. I think the reason why they had these on the World War II Jeeps is they had the valve stem was closer to the edge of the rim, I think. It also may be that they just didn't do them for these anymore. So you put your valve core back in. Make sure that your valve stem is seated so that it's basically, you're going to make sure your valve stem is seated so that it's all the way out there. And because if it's angling in like this, or angling way out, or like this, like this or like this, then that means the valve stem is not lined up, and you will end up pinching that and probably end up ripping the valve stem off at some point in time. And I guarantee if you end up ripping the valve stem off, it's going to be in the worst frickin' place possible. So now that we've got it, got the bead seated, we've got a tube replaced in it. Now we're going to go ahead and air it up to 25 pounds. And what I have to do that, I have this little setup right here. Goes to this, which is a clip-on. And what you do is you set your pressure. And this is set at, what's it set at right now? You know, I hate being blind. Okay, it's set at about 35 right now. We don't want it at 35. So we're going to have to let that pressure down. That's a pressure regulator. And so that is, bring that up to right about 25, because it's a rear tire highway pressures are 25. And we'll take the hose on back out here. Hope I got enough of it undone. And that's a clip-on deal there. And so that is going to sit there and just fill it up. I can let it sit there all night long hooked up to the air hose, but it's only going to put 25 pounds of air in it. Okay, we've had it set on there long enough, and we're going to go ahead and check it. And it looks like it's only got about 20 pounds of air in there, so check it twice. Yep, we're going to have to let that thing air up a little bit more. But we're going to put 25 pounds in it, and then we're going to let it set overnight. And then check it again in the morning. So at any rate, we're going to get 25 pounds in there, and then we're going to let it set overnight. And then we're going to come back and check it in the morning. And make sure it hasn't gone down at all. If it has, then we're going to have to go ahead and repeat this whole process. So at any rate, we will be back at it tomorrow. All right, folks. We've got one last thing we're going to do tonight while we're waiting to check on that tire. We're going to put our find from the trail ride. For those of you who don't know, you can watch the video. Although I did not actually film finding this. I was in the middle of digging old Pvt Parts out from the mess that I'd got him into, and happened to find a lucky horseshoe. So, well, I think it's actually a mule shoe. So we're going to go ahead and attach that permanent like to old Pvt Parts here. There we go. That ain't going nowhere. All right, folks, it is the next day, so we're going to go ahead and check this tire and see how it did. And there we have it. She's still at 25 pounds, so it's not leaking down. So now that we know our tire's is not leaking down, we know we got the tube put in there. We're gonna go ahead and get some things changed around. Get the spare put back on its spot in the back, put this tire back on to the right rear, and start getting things ready for the Yerington Vora race, which is coming up in about a week. So at any rate, I want to thank you guys for watching, and please remember to like, share, and subscribe, and we will see you on the next one. Thanks again.